Hi Diego, howdy YouTube.
Hello, I'm Gary Cline. I'm the owner of Black Lake Organic Nursery and Garden Store. I started out in my garage about 1980. Basically, we sell gardening supplies and have been selling plants for mainly vegetable gardening. This is our 31st year in garden supplies for local organic growers. And we are now switching over to a different mode of operation, and we're going to get into developing a superior potting soil and ultimately a superior garden soil mix. This year are starting up classes on soil building and advanced organic gardening. So that will be, the soil building part will be a major focus of the classes. This year, we're also going to be offering classes on advanced organic gardening, and those are going to be held here as well. We'll have them right inside the store, and so we'll actually get some hands-on workshops on how these potting mixes are made and what goes into them and what makes them superior and what makes them more than simply organic. So that's going to be a major focus of the gardening class, planning and your preparation of the garden site and what kinds of things you might be growing this time of year and what techniques are involved. So that's the sort of thing that I see us doing in the garden class or course. A primary emphasis is going to be on soil building. And for people who complete the entire course, we'll issue a certificate of Master Soil Builder. All right, now we're out behind the store, and this is where the area where we make our potting mixes. You can see behind me here, this tumbler is what we make them in. And our soils, our potting mixes, are actually soil-based, or you can think of it as dirt. We combine a number of ingredients here to make an organic, really well-balanced and fertilized potting mix that we have used a lot in our nursery growing and in the vegetable transplants that we have grown and sold over the years. Now this year we're not going to be selling the vegetable plants. However, we are going to get more into the development and production of our potting mixes. And so it'll start out small, it'll start out here. The other thing I wanted to point out is if over this way, this is the barn warehouse where we keep our fertilizer materials. We call them simples, and where we combine them into our mixes, our complete organic fertilizer mixes that are mineral balanced, and then they have the friendly microbes in them. That little room right there is where we do that mixing. It's done manually, rather small scale, but we turn out tons of these fertilizer blends that we call our bloom fertilizers, 10 different versions of it, quite popular locally. We'll continue making those, and there are some retail outlets in the area where people can get those, and some of them we can continue offering here.
Go ahead.
Okay, in addition to, or as an alternative to pre-blended custom mixes, you can soils tested and specifically develop blends or put on ingredients that are called for in the soil test, and we can also make those up as custom mixes for small farms and perhaps gardens as well. An example is a farm up the road, Delphi Farms, where the soil has been tested, and the test provides a list or prescription of the individual ingredients that go into the garden soil to make sure that it is fully fertilized and a balanced array of all the needed nutrients to make it come close to being the perfect soil for growing the perfect kinds of crops with high nutritional value.
Thank you for watching. See you later, YouTube. Bye, Diego.
20% phosphorus and 20% calcium. So it's probably, fairly high in calcium. Sodium went way down. Something may be pushing the sodium out. And there's antagonism between those four minerals. So I don't know that they give the percentage. Well, they say that here's desired. No, sodium went up. Okay. So even though it went up, because of the other changes, it's still a little low. And another amazing thing is that when you cut down a green manure and that essentially live material, raw, falls on the soil, it has a cation exchange capacity of roughly 0. And once it decomposes and goes through the rotting and the microbial decomposition and whatever they do to it, it actually winds up without very high cation exchange capacity. How does that happen? Don't know. How does it go from next to 0 to as high as you can get?
Kind of like the mysteries of honey.
Honey. Okay, tell me that one.
Well, it's pollen that bees regurgitate, and man really doesn't understand the value of it.
I guess, yeah.
They don't know it. I have a beekeeper friend who exaggerates a lot, so
yeah.
He said 85% of what's in honey is unknown to man. They've researched it and they don't know what most of the stuff going on in there is.
That could be. Yeah,
and that's why it's such an important part of our diet.
Well, a similar miracle goes on in the transformation of rock to clay. So, you start off with rock, it likely has next to 0 cation exchange capacity. As it gets broken down into sand, then it may pick up somehow. Gets broken down into silt, then it picks up some cation exchange capacity. But when it goes from silt to clay, it undergoes a chemical reshuffling to where the aluminum and the silicon in it reorganize into layers like a deck of cards. The aluminum, silicon, and then the other minerals get tucked in along the edges and maybe in between the layers, and the cation exchange goes way up because it develops a negative electrical charge as a result of that shuffling and rearranging of the molecules. So it starts out next to 0 cation exchange, winds up fairly high in clay, in most clays. And the fact that in a good soil you're going to have a higher percentage of clay than you are of organic matter, they may wind up being somewhat comparable in their total cation exchange capability, the humus and the clay. But if the soil tends to be more raw organic matter and sandy, silty, so forth, comparatively low cation exchange overall.
Yeah, I think I had a silty loam, sandy loam, and turned it into a loamy sand.
Say that again?
If I remember how that qualifies, the first word is the larger percentage. I had a sandy loam and turned it into a loamy sand.
Yeah. So,
if I have that right.
A lot depends on how we're defining loam, but technically loam is a combination of silt, sand, and clay of certain percentages, certain minimum percentages, plus some organic matter.
So by adding organic matter, I think I did 4 years of green manuring while I was gardening, and then I introduced a fallow row So every 5th year there was nothing growing, I changed a sandy loam into a loamy sand.
Yeah.
And if you're doing container gardening as your start class, then it's all readily accessible. I mean, you could bring a couple plants in here and use them as your props, your demonstration on your conversation without having to go outside and look at it, something growing in the dirt.